United States today. 19 million men and women who've lived extraordinary lives. 19 million stories worth telling. Stories about big wars and small gestures. These are the Americans who witnessed history. These are the wars as seen through their eyes. These are the stories of veterans from World War I, World War II, and the Korean, Vietnam, and each day we lose 1,500 of those who served, and we lose more of our history as their stories go untold.
Recording those stories is a part of America's history. The entire story will come together when you tell your part of it.
Millions of Americans. Millions of stories. Tell your story. Ask others theirs. There's no story or sacrifice too small.
I urge all Americans, veterans and non-veterans alike, to participate in this very, very important project. Veterans help to shape our nation's future. And only by understanding what they did for us can we truly understand the price of freedom.
My name is Frank Boring. I am the Director of Oral History at the Michigan Military Preservation Society. We are a nonprofit organization that's building the Michigan Military Air, Land, and Sea Museum at the Gerald R. Ford International Airport. What you've just seen is an excerpt from a promotional film that was put out by the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. The Library of Congress Veterans History Project is an attempt to gather material, oral histories, documents, diaries, letters from all over the country of our veterans. Here at the Michigan Military Museum, we are a partner archive with the Library of Congress. What this means is that all the materials that we gather stay here in Michigan. We identify them, we put them into a database, and we will make them available to future generations to access through our website. What you're about to see is a raw, uncut oral history interview. At some later date, we will actually edit these and make them available through the schools. At this point, you will have an opportunity to see what it's like to have an actual oral history interview. These will be going on each week with a different veteran. We hope you enjoy. Let's begin with your name, where were you born, and when were you born?
Carl Ballard. I was born in October 16th, 1932, here in Kent County.
What was your early schooling like?
I went to a little school in Moline, Michigan. In fact, it was a new school. They'd brought in the little one-room schoolhouses and put them all into this new school in Moline. At that time, it went up through the 12th grade. I think it was only had 4 rooms, but went up through the 12th grade, and by the time I got up to high school, I went to the 8th grade there, and then high school was going to Wayland. So I went to Wayland High School and graduated from Wayland in 1951.
Now, in 1951, what were your prospects in terms of getting out of high school? What did you anticipate you were going to have to do?
Well, we knew that we were going to go into the service. Everybody that was coming out of high school knew that they was going to have to join the Air Force or Navy, or they were going to be drafted in the Army. They was just was expected. In fact, we had several in our high school and my class which were a Marine reservist. They didn't even graduate. They had to go right out. They took them right out of high school, juniors and seniors, and they went to Korea.
Did you know where Korea was?
I had no idea at that time. No, I wasn't. I guess probably when they started going, and we knew that we were going to be in the Army. I guess probably we knew a little bit about it, and we could hear the news releases on the fighting over there. But
so what did you decide to do?
Well, I decided to join the Army at the time. There was a deal where you could join and join up for 2 years. Otherwise, if you normally joined the Army, it was for 3 years. But they had a special deal there where if you joined before you were drafted, why, you could go for 2 years. So I volunteered to go, and so I went in June of '52, I believe it was, and rather than waiting around for the draft and having to get a job and not knowing when you was going to go, I just decided to go.
So what was the process of joining the military during that period of time? What did you have to do?
I think went down to Allegan to the draft board, I think, down in Allegan, and signed up, and then took a bus to Detroit and had a physical, and then within a week or so we went to Fort Custer and got our uniforms and maybe shots and everything there, maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks in Fort Custer, and then boarded a train and headed for 101st Airborne at Camp Breckinridge, Kentucky.
Now, where was your basic training, though? Was that at Fort Custer?
No, that was at Camp Breckinridge, Kentucky.
So Custer was kind of like a staging area?
Right.
Basically
yep.
getting
Just,
your uniforms?
Yep,
and okay.
getting shots and all that, yeah.
Now, at that time, did they offer you to become part of the 101st Airborne, or is that something that just happened to you?
No,
or?
it just happened, yeah.
Okay.
They just put you where they wanted to put you, and that's where I happened to go.
Now, you're 19 years old, barely traveled outside of this area.
Mm-hmm.
You're now arriving in this huge camp, right? Breckinridge
Right.
was a huge camp.
Right.
Give us a visual idea. You're stepping off of the bus or the train,
Train,
okay.
yeah.
What am I seeing?
Sergeants yelling and hollering at you, get over here, get in line, do this, do that. And I believe it was the night, too. I believe it was dark at that time, as I recall. And I don't know where we were. I have no idea. I guess we must have been on camp someplace. But yeah. I think they got us off and got us lined up and got us in some deuce-and-a-half trucks. Took us to our camps.
Let's look at the next morning. You're sleeping until 11 o'clock, leisurely coffee, right? No problem.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Well, what happened the first morning? What do you recall? I mean, it doesn't have to be the first morning, but give us an idea of what that period of time, what was your day like?
Well, we always, the first, I'd say at least 2 weeks was just, they just made work of things to do. We weren't organized yet, I guess, into companies and platoons and stuff. We were in barracks. It was two-story barracks with bunk beds right close together. There's probably maybe 60 people in a barracks. And he'd get us up early in the morning and harass us and holler and yell and attention and that sort of thing. And I think we did some drilling. We did a lot of drilling and learning to march and learning the commands and
left, right, all that stuff, yeah.
But I don't think the actual basic training started for a couple of weeks, and they had us out there just doing menial things, just to keep us busy, keep us out of trouble, I guess. I remember crawling around on our hands and knees, just a whole line of us there mowing the grass with our fingers, just pulling the grass, weeds I guess it was, out of there, just going along hands and knees along. And I remember going out and sprinkling the lawn in the rain. And and I guess it was part maybe of the training that you did what you was told, if it made sense or not. If it didn't make sense, you did it. You obeyed what they told you to do, and you went and did it, whether you thought it was crazy or what. And I guess that's part of it. But then we finally, when we got down into the regular routine of basic training, why then we had routines where we had reveille early in the morning, and then breakfast, and then whatever training was on at that time, whether it was marching or might have been training with weapons or going out on the rifle range or whatever it was.
Were these men that you were serving with, they were from all over the country?
All over the country, yeah.
So that must have been an experience in itself, listening
Yeah.
to different accents. And
Oh, yes, yeah.
was there any kind of teasing amongst the guys that, you know, you're from Michigan or you're from Texas or?
No, I don't remember that too much. No, we were put in alphabetically, so the A's were long and B's. I was in there with the Alexanders and Buellers and Ballards and Baileys and all that. I remember that. And no, I guess we probably did. We probably teased and laughed and that sort of thing. But we had them from the deep south and from the north, and a lot of them Indiana and all around, yeah. And this was the basic at the 101st Airborne was 16 weeks of basic training. Normally it was 8 weeks. Almost all of the other Army was 8 weeks, but Airborne was 16 weeks, and we run every place. We never walked. You didn't want to be caught walking. If you were going to the mess hall, or if you were going to the library or to a movie or what, well, you run. You never walked. And,
why Airborne?
I don't know. That's just where they put us to do our training. I don't know why. I have no idea.
So did you actually get into the training where you jumped off of a tower or any of that kind of stuff?
No, that was not involved in the basic training.
Okay.
That would have been in jump school, and that would have been in Fort Benning, Georgia, which I didn't get to go to.
Right. So let's go through a basic day. Okay, your reveille, the trumpets wake you up, or the bugles rather.
Yeah.
The drill sergeant comes in and yells at you to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So you're all out of bed, and you're standing at attention in your skivvies, basically.
No, we got dressed.
Oh, you okay?
We got dressed, yep, and went out in the street in front of the barracks and stood at attention. And we all had our positions. Usually it was the tallest one on the right-hand side on down. So the big tall guys usually got the ribbing and stuff. They stood out, and I was kind of mediocre, so I didn't stand out much. I could kind of hide and not get picked on too much. But yeah, we'd stand at a reveille, and they would give us the information for the day, what was going to happen. The company commander would come out, and the platoon leaders, and give us what was going to happen. And then usually we was dismissed and went back into the barracks for a little while, and then went to mess hall, had breakfast.
How was the food?
I didn't mind the food. I didn't complain, I don't think, about the food. I think it was pretty good. I think they did the best they could, and there's some inconveniences. I learned to drink my coffee without cream and sugar because it was always way down to the other end of the table. By the time it got to me, it was empty anyway. And also butter. I didn't bother to put butter on my bread because it was never available right where I was most of the time. And salt and pepper. It wasn't worth the hassle of trying to get it clear down to the end of the table. If it happened to be there, I'd use it, but if it didn't, why, it didn't. So, but other than that, it was pretty good. Yeah.
Now, once basic training was over with, where did you go from there?
I volunteered for leadership school, and so I went to 8 weeks at leadership school right there, different company, different place in the Army there, but still there in the Fort Breckinridge.
Why, I mean, I realize I'm asking this of a 19-year-old kid, but why did you volunteer for leadership school?
Well, I thought that I was going to get a 30-day leave and then come back to leadership school. But it turned out that they canceled all the leaves, and everybody that volunteered for leadership went right to leadership school. And I think most of us did it because everybody we heard, the rumors was that everybody was going to Korea when they graduated. And so we figured, well, we'd go to leadership school and maybe the war would be over with or something. We wouldn't have to go. So I guess maybe that's a cowardly way or something.
No, I don't. I think it's a matter of taking whatever opportunities are ahead of you.
That, and then after leadership school, and several of us volunteered to go into jump school, which would have been in Fort Benning, Georgia. That's when we would have learned the jump, and we'd actually had to jump.
But what happened?
Well, we got called one day. We were ready to, at that time, again, we were expecting a 30-day leave and then go to jump school, report to Fort Benning, Georgia. And about that time, we called into the company commander, called us in, and he said that just us that had volunteered to go to jump school. Called us into the CP and said all orders had been changed, that everybody would go to Korea, and they give us 7 days from Camp Stoneman, or from Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, to report to Camp Stoneman, California. So I had 7 days to get from there to home and then back to California.
Your parents were still alive at that time?
Yes, they were, yeah.
When you came home, was there any discussion about the fact you're going to Korea? Was there any concern on the part of your
yes, I'm sure they were, yeah. And I became engaged at that time, so I had my girlfriend, and we spent a lot of time in that 7 days. My parents probably didn't see me very much during those 7 days, but yeah, I remember definitely everybody going to the airport. I flew out of Grand Rapids, the old airport down here on at 44th Street, and
you know, you had mentioned earlier that when you were in high school, you didn't really know where Korea was or anything. But by this time, you know, there with your girlfriend, your family, did you have any idea what you were getting into?
Not really. No, I don't. You really don't have a clue. I guess I'd seen war films and that sort of thing, and you see it on TV, the reports coming from Korea, and knew that it wasn't good, that's for sure. But something you haven't experienced and you don't understand.
So you and this group are transferred then to this new fort. Did you immediately then board a plane, a ship, or what? How did you get to Korea?
We were in Camp Stoneman for, I think, probably about 2 weeks at Camp Stoneman. And that was a experience. I'd never been out there. It was in the winter time, and it was nice and warm, and the fog in San Francisco was tremendous. I remember standing in formation out in front of the barracks, and you not be able to see your platoon leader in front of you. He couldn't see you either, so you could have slept in and nobody would have known it, because they didn't know who was there and who wasn't. But again, they give us all the shots and everything, and kept us busy, kept us details, mopping floors, doing this, doing that, standing guard duty. I remember doing guard duty at the ladies at the, I guess it was a wax barracks, walking around the perimeter all night long, or I guess maybe it was 2-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts or something. But
was there any briefing? Any kind of meeting where they said, okay, men, this is Korea, here's a map, this is where you're going? Any of that?
No, no, nothing of that I remember, no. It was strictly processing you through, and I think before we shipped out, I think they gave us our, I don't know, they gave us our weapons then? I think they did. I think we had our weapons and our backpacks and all the equipment we needed.
What did you carry?
In
A carbine or
M1 rifle.
oh, okay.
I think at that time it was everybody had an M1 rifle.
Okay. So how did you get from San Francisco to Korea?
Boarded a troop ship in San Francisco, and I remember distinctly going under the Golden Gate Bridge and just thinking, am I going to come back? Is this what's ahead now? Yep, I remember distinctly watching that Golden Gate slip behind us and wondering what was ahead. Yeah.
What was the trip over like?
Well, I was sick for the first 3 days, so don't ask me. I don't know. It was terrible. Just terrible. It was. And I think if they would have let us stay down in our bunks and rest, why we probably would have been better. But they made us get up and get out on deck, and they was doing work. They wanted us to chip paint or scrub the deck or do this or that, keep us busy, and everybody was throwing up on the steps going up, and it smelled, and the whole deck was full of vomit, and that made it worse. If you could have stayed out of that and stayed down, it might have been better, but it was terrible for that first 3 days. And you'd get in line for the meal, and they said, you got to eat something. You got to put something in your stomach. Well, you'd get in line, and somebody'd throw up in front of you. You'd smell that, and then you'd run to the deck and run to the railing, and pretty soon you didn't have anything to throw up, and it was miserable. But by the third day, started getting over it, and then when you did get over it, then you really felt good and really felt hungry. Boy, you'd go down there and eat everything they give you and then some, and felt very good then. But
yeah, there's a ceremony of, if you've never crossed the ocean, called the King Neptune ceremony. Did you experience that?
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about that. What was that all about?
I don't remember much. They handed you a slip of paper, and but that's about all. I don't.
So there wasn't any elaborate kind of ceremony or anything?
No, not that I remember.
Yeah.
No.
Because there's guys that had, they'd make up a bucket of fish and soap, and they'd flap your face in it and make you do all these kind of things. And
no, I don't
you
remember that
lucked
at all. Yeah, no, I didn't remember any of that.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I think they just said we were going through there now, and we had a piece of paper that they handed out.
You go from being a pollywog to I forgot what the
I don't know.
name is.
No, it wasn't no big deal when we were either going or coming back, as far as I remember.
So where did you arrive? Where did the ship arrive?
We come into Incheon, and there's no dock there for the ship to dock at, so they just anchored out in the harbor, and then we went down a rope ladder down the side of the ship and into landing barges. I think they call them LSTs or something like that, some kind of a landing barge, and we had our full gear with our rifles and everything. And
now Incheon had already been taken, so this was just, you weren't coming into battle or anything like that. This
we
was
weren't.
The war, the battle had already been over.
Right, but I didn't know that. I don't know if the other guys knew it or not, but I could hear gunfire as we were coming in. And I thought we were just like Normandy, or like I seen in the movies. I thought we was going to hit the beach and start fighting. But when we got there, it was training. They were reservists were training on the rifle range. It was a gunfire we heard, and we just marched up there, and they loaded us on trains. And some from the ship went to all different divisions. I went to the 2nd Division. Some went to the 40th Division. They just paired us off, or you're going here and you're going here, and I don't know how they did it or any rhyme or reason to it. I guess so many divisions needed so many men, and they took it. My brother-in-law was on the same ship as I was, and he went to the 40th Division. And so I watched him go one way, and I went the other. So
now, once you arrived in Incheon, Did you see Koreans? I mean, did you?
Oh, yes.
What was your first reaction to the? Keep in mind that I was born in Asia, so the smell, the atmosphere, the heat, or any, was it cold? Was it hot? What was it like?
It was cold, and not terribly cold, but it was winter. It was January, I think. And I guess we loaded onto trains, and we sat there on the siding. Well, our whole trip, every once in a while, we'd pull into a town and sat on the siding for a while. I don't know why, but the thing that what got me was the children that would come out along the train, along the tracks, and holding out their hand, candy, candy, GI, candy, or money, GI, money, money, GI. And that got me. Just little scuffy children with ragged clothes and just wanting money, and we gave them a lot what we had. They're just holding out their hands, and little kids and mama-sans with babies on their backs, and that's what I remember the most. And,
well, you know, it's hard for, in some cases, Americans to realize the poverty. You know, we talk about poverty in America, but until you go to Asia, or you go to some of these countries, you know, you see just how destitute these people are. And, you know, it's not a matter of having a penny to buy a candy bar, it's a penny to stay alive.
Yeah. Well, you know, you got to remember that these people had been run over at least 3 times by then. Communists, I guess North Koreans came down and took it over, and then we went in and pushed them back up, and then the Chinese got involved and pushed them back down, and then we finally was back. So all that time, you know, bombs and guns and artillery and everything, and it just devastated all of it. The houses were all gone, the buildings were gone. They were living in huts, tin huts and cardboard and little made out of straw, like teepees, stuff like that.
So when you arrived there and you were split off to go into your different areas, where did you actually go? Where did you physically go?
I went to the 2nd Infantry Division, the 9th Infantry Regiment.
And what was there? I mean, were there barracks there? Where did you actually stay?
No, I guess we stayed in tents back in reserve, but not for very long. I went right up online. It was within days that I walked up. I remember Little Gibraltar, the 9th Regiment, Company E was up on Little Gibraltar at that time, and they had what they called a bowling alley. It was a area where the Chinese was in front of us at that time, and they could see the road going up there. So if they had artillery or mortars, they could. So it was night, pitch black at night, and we walked up. The trucks would only go up about 5 miles from the lines, front lines, at that time at Little Gibraltar, where we were at least. And so we walked up that road at night, pitch black. I guess a corporal or somebody took us up that knew the area. And I think there was one other guy and myself went to the 1st platoon. And we walked up there at night and didn't know anything, you know, didn't know where we were or what we were. And the hill was very steep, the backside of that hill, and we would they had steps carved into the ground stone, and with a rope there, and we'd pull ourselves up with a rope. We had our full field pack on with our rifle and full field.
About how heavy was that?
Mickey Mouse boots. Oh, I don't know, probably 40 pounds, okay, maybe, something like that.
And what are Mickey Mouse boots?
Those were the winter boots that they give you, just saved guys from frostbite. They were very good boots. They were insulated boots. You just wore a thin layer of socks, and your feet would sweat in them all the time. You walking in water practically, but you never got cold. It got warm.
And they were a result of the fact that the guys that came before you didn't have those boots, and they had all kinds of problems.
They just had their regular combat boots, and they would wet, and they froze their feet. Many lost toes and feet, and these come in, and we were very fortunate to have those. We had good winter clothes. We had parkas and hoods on them, and all insulated pants and coats, and
it still was cold, though.
It was cold, yes.
Yeah.
The worst was the rain. You know, we did have parkas that we could put over, or what do they call them, ponchos.
Yeah.
But I remember days not ever being dry. Just and that was hard. But
why did you call it Little Gibraltar?
well, that's just the name of the hill. They had all hills numbered. You know, you had Pork Chop Hill, and you had Hill 220, and you had Old Baldy and that, and this was the name of the hill, Gibraltar, Little Gibraltar. I don't know why, but it was a big hill, and then some people might even call it a mountain. I don't know, but
so let's get a better idea visually of your position. I mean, you're facing the Chinese army, right? They're not that far away. Are you on a mountain and then they're on a mountain, or you're on a hill, they're on a hill across from you, and there's like a little valley-like area in between? Okay. Do you have sandbags, or how are you protected?
Yeah, we have trenches.
Okay.
Communication trenches, they called them. Clear across Korea, I think, was trenches that were dug in, and you went from one position to another in the trenches. You could go from one platoon to another, one squad to the other through these trenches. You never stuck your head up. But then in each area you would have a gun position, either a rifle position or maybe a heavy weapons position, a 57 recoilless rifle, or a 30 caliber machine gun spread out. Company commander would decide what was strategic, where the best fire line was, and put you in there. So I went up on line, pitch black at night, and somebody met me, and I think company commander, I think his name was Lieutenant Brown, as I recall, and met in a little bunker, and glad you're here, and you're going to be in first platoon of here, and here's a BAR, so
yeah, tell us about this BAR.
Do.
Pfeiffer told me the same thing. He got that dumped on him too.
Yeah, that was a heavy weapon, but it was had a bipod on the front, so it was very big and very heavy, but had awesome firepower. You had cartridges, or what do they call them?
Clips?
Clips.
Yeah.
30 round clips, I think, that you could put on there, and we had a belt that would hold 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 10 30-round clips, and it would fire automatically. So you had a lot of firepower there. So that was the new guys always got those. And right away, I don't know if it was the first night or the second night while I was out on patrol or out on outpost with the BAR. And the BAR was always the first one to go out because that was supposedly the most firepower. And then coming back, you're always the last one back. You always was supposed to guard the squad as we came back in.
So what was your first night like?
It was like a dream, really. It just kind of blends in with everything else. I can't say I was awfully scared. I just, it was like just walking in a fog, and you did what you was told, and And that was it, I think. It was, then after a few days, why, then you got accustomed to things, and I guess you was more afraid then, knowing what was ahead or what was happening, or you know that night you're going to go out on patrol, and you knew what could happen if you went out on patrol and met the enemy, and so then it was more apprehensive. But
did the guys that had been there for a while kind of let you know, from their experience, about the fighting the Chinese or anything? Or was there any kind of conversation with a new guy about what to expect?
No, not really. No.
So you were just expected to fall into line.
Yep.
Here's a BAR. Yep. This is what you're doing, and
yep.
just like all the
yep.
communications before, basically no communications.
Yep.
Just this is what you're supposed to do.
That's about right.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would go out in practice if we were going to go out on patrol. Why, that afternoon or that morning, because we always went out at night, that afternoon or that morning, why, we would go back in the back area someplace, and the battalion commander or the company commander or somebody they'd pick some terrain that was similar to where we were going to go, and they would position us on how we were going to go. The BAR would be here, and the rifleman would be there, and the radio man would be, and they'd position us where they wanted us to do, and we'd go through a simulation of what we was going to do on patrol, but nothing like it, because it was daylight and everything else, and when we went on patrol it was pitch black. You didn't know where you were going or what. You hoped that your platoon leader or the leader knew where he was going, and you just followed him and did what was walked along. But General Clark, or our battalion commander, was Major Clark, which was General Clark's son at that time, and he was a very good battalion commander, and he was very thorough in training us or showing us. We had a lot of confidence in him, and then he got wounded when we had a battle one night, and never saw him again. He went back.
Well, let's go into that. I mean, you're making it very clear to me, this nighttime, pitch black, can't even see in front of you, and somehow you're supposed to maneuver in a way that you practice during the day when you can see. I mean,
can't do it.
I'm visualizing this, and I've been in pitch black before, you know. But and now, what about your first real encounter with the enemy? Did that happen relatively quickly, or? Yes,
that happened. Well, it was. I think it was in March. Maybe the 7th or 8th or 10th of March, something like that. I was out on the outpost. We were all out on the outpost, or my squad was. And
how many are in a squad?
Well, it was supposed to be 12, but normally you didn't have a full squad. I'd say probably 8 was normal.
So you got 8 guys out in the pitch black dark.
8 to 10, yeah.
Okay.
And we had positions out there. We knew where we were going to go. We had, there was regular like paths that would go out to the outpost, and our mission was to warn if we were attacked, to warn the company so they could get everybody up online, get 100% up online, and then we were supposed to fight a delay in action, pull back, fight a delay in action, and pull back. And we were out in that outpost, and I had the BAR out on the point, and I heard the cutting the wire. I heard the Chinese were cutting the wire through the communications wire, the razor wire. I heard them cutting that, and a radio man got on the radio, and I heard him. I talked to the company commander and saying, they're coming. And in the meantime, I had I'd grabbed my grenade, and I'd pulled a pin, and then because I figured I was going to throw that grenade and start shooting, because I knew they were right there. You couldn't see them. It was pitch black, but I could hear them coming through the wire. And about that time, I heard the company commander tell a radio man to pull back. Well, I'd already pulled that pin on that grenade, and I was holding it, so I throwed that thing as far as I could and grabbed the rifle, and I'd taken off my gloves to pull the pin on the grenade, and I had laid my gloves there on the ground there in front of me, and I think my gloves are still laying there. I grabbed my BAR, and we headed back. Well, we didn't get back. We got back about halfway, and just everything broke loose. Mortars, artillery, everything just cut loose. So we got into a depression in the ground. I guess it was a mortar hole or artillery hole, or maybe a foxhole, an old foxhole or something. We got in there, and we couldn't move. We were just artillery, and everything was coming all around. So we had to stay there, and the fighting was going on all around us. And then when it got daylight, things quieted down, and we was able to get back to our line. And
now you're in this depression, pitch black. When the guns are fired, though, you're seeing flashes, right, and the explosions, and so you're getting this kind of light and then dark, light and then dark, light and dark, but lots of noise.
Right, yeah.
I can't even imagine what that's...
Yeah. And the fighting, most of the fighting was going down in our 2nd platoon, down to the left of us. Little Gibraltar was very high, but this little finger came down, which was a lot lower hill, and that's where the 2nd platoon was, and that's where they hit most. I think they estimated about a battalion of Chinese hit our 2nd platoon that night.
Did you get any sense of, I mean, this is so hard to fully understand. Did you get any sense of the numbers of people that were out there?
No, no.
So it could have been 2 or it could have been 2,000?
Yeah, you had no idea. No, you couldn't see anything. You didn't know. I
mean, that's scary in itself. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if you've got people coming at you and you're shooting at them, but if you have no idea.
And and you're not aiming, you can't see anybody really. But then we got back and got back into the area, back to our line, and we were moving that day, and we think that's why the Chinese hit, because there's always confusion. I think it was the British that were coming up to relieve us, and we were going to go back in reserve. We'd already been up about 30 days or more, maybe 45 days.
Yeah, it's important to note here that it's important to note here that this is a United Nations effort.
Yeah, we had the Thailanders.
Not just the Americans.
Thailanders was on our left flank, and so I think it was the British that were coming up to relieve us, and then we were going to go back to reserve. So, and it's always confusing because they're coming up there. It's all new positions. They don't know where they're going, and we're trying to get out, and they're coming in, and that's always confusion. And the Chinese knew that, and so that's when they hit. Well, they loaded us on trucks. We finally got down there. The firing during the day. There was never hardly any fighting during the day because we had air power, and we just bombed the dickens. If they stuck their heads out during the day, we bombed the dickens out of them. We never saw them. They never stuck their heads out during the day. So day was always relatively calm. And so they loaded us on trucks, and we headed back, and all of a sudden there was some MPs there standing in the road and waving us. And we said, well, wait a minute, that's not back, that's up, that's going up. And so they went up a little bit, and they unloaded us behind a big cliff, big rock cliff. General Fry, I think his name was General Fry, flew in on a helicopter, landed out there in a helicopter. And he said, I know you guys have been up there for 30 or 40 days, whatever it was, but he says, we got to go up and retake that hill. We've got to go up. He says, I said, I'll promise you I'll have you off there in a week. He says, so we got to go back up. And So we went back up, marched back up where the 2nd platoon had been hit, and we lost a lot of men. Our 2nd platoon was annihilated. And that's when Major Clark was wounded. And so we went back, and again, during the day, there weren't no firing or anything. We walked back up there, and we carried bodies down and carried ammunition back up, and waited figured they would be coming. They'd hit us again the next night. And in fact, they put loudspeakers out in the valley, and said, be ready, GI. He said, we're coming tonight. Said,
this is all in English?
Yeah, oh yeah, in English, yeah. And and then it was raining. That's when it was March. I remember it was right around the 18th. I remember it was my girlfriend's, which is now my wife's, birthday, right around March 18th. And I was thinking, boy, to be back home with her now. And it had rained. We were in mud up to our ankles, and it rained for like 3 or 4 days straight. Never dry. We never had a dry set of clothes on for at least 3 days. I remember going into the bunker and laying down whatever little sleep we could get or little rest we could get. We were up like 36 hours, I think. But it was about 1 inch or 2 inches of water that I laid in and tried to get a little sleep. It was miserable. I remember that. And it was probably the 2nd or 3rd day we were up there before they got all the Chinese bodies down. And so there was a couple of nights that we'd had to step over the bodies to go to our position. We got the Americans down and got them out, but the Chinese was a little later before they took care of them. So that was a bad couple of weeks, and we didn't get out of there for another 2 weeks at least, and maybe 3 weeks before we finally got relieved.
Before that, had you ever seen a dead body before?
No. Mm-mm.
So this is, and you're about, what, 20 years old now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, you're numb to it. You're just numb. Then, just you do what you have to do, and you're trained to do it. The same when we was out there on the outpost and I pulled that pin on that grenade. It just come natural. I mean, that's what we were trained that we were going to do, and you did it, and it's amazing how you get programmed to do that. But
you had mentioned earlier about you're in this miserable rain and you're thinking about your girlfriend, future wife. Did you get any kind of mail? Was there any kind of communications with home?
Oh yes, we got mail. Yeah, we got mail. I think almost every day. Okay. I didn't get mail every day,
right,
but,
sure,
but they brought up the mail, and also a thing, they tried to get us 1 hot meal a day, and it was amazing how they could do that. But we usually, even during that time, they'd manage. Cooks were in the back, of course. They weren't up on line, but they'd bring them up with hot, insulated things, and we would usually have 1 meal a day.
You'd have a little mess kit, or did they provide you trays?
No, we had mess kits. We used our mess kits and put them in there, and then we'd have to wash them and keep them clean. And then another thing, I talked about the Mickey Mouse boots with, and you're, like I say, you're walking in water practically because your feet sweat, and that was part of it. I mean, that's, I guess, designed that way. And the medics every day, they come up with clean socks, and we had to change our socks, and they would sit there because some guys would be lazy and wouldn't do it, and then they'd get what they call trench feet. They'd get sores on their feet and everything. And so every night, every afternoon around supper time, all the medics come around with a whole bag of socks, and you took your boots off, and your wet old stinky socks went into a bag and you put on a brand new, or not brand new, but a clean pair of socks. And they were good at that. And I always praised the cooks for doing a good job for what little equipment and stuff they had. But
The rest of the time you ate out of cans?
Yes, we had
or
this sea rations, they called it. Yep.
Yeah.
Had
I've
sea
actually
rations.
eaten those.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
hard to
we
describe
had,
having bacon and eggs in a can, you know, or cake in a can.
Yeah, yeah.
So once you moved into the position there where you said Clark got wounded,
Yes.
what happened there? What was your
Well,
experience there?
They never attacked us again after that. We were up there, and what happened, where our 2nd platoon was on that area, which was probably maybe 40 men, had that area, 2nd platoon. We went up, our whole company went up there and took that position.
That's about how many men?
Well, that would have been, our 2nd platoon was pretty well gone, so it would have been about 3 platoons, so that would have been probably 120 or so men.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than that. And not only that, we had a Fox company came up. They were in reserve. They come up into those positions. And we had, I think, 6 tanks came up and took their positions up there. Well, I know we had at least 2 quad 50s. They were on a half track.
Oh, okay.
They were on a half track and had 50 caliber machine guns, 2 50 caliber machine guns. It was on a turret, and they could, so that's what was on, and besides that, we had corps artillery. I mean, you have your company mortars, and then you have regimental artillery, and then corps artillery. And we had on call, we had corps artillery on call.
So you could call and they would shoot from behind you somewhere. You didn't know where they were.
You bet.
Yeah. Okay.
And that day after that, when we went up on line to relieve the 2nd platoon up there, the Navy planes just come over and bombed that hill. I mean, it wasn't a blade of grass that you could see. It was just like a plowed field, that hill. I don't know how anybody could have lived and survived on that hill. I mean, it'd be like 30 planes at a time would just come over and just dive down and bomb and come back up. And and then we had a lot of searchlights. We had, I don't know, 2 or 3 searchlights up there, and they lit up that whole hill at night. I mean, anything move, artillery would just, and so they didn't try it again. I'm sure they knew what was going on, and
oh, that much firepower. Who's gonna stay?
Yeah. It wasn't.
So what happened next? Where did you go from there?
Then finally we went back in reserve, and I think we went back to Pup Young Knee, as I recall, little village, and went back in reserve and had tents.
You talking about pup tents? Or you talking about
no, we had big tents,
big ones, so you had...
enough for the squad.
Okay,
They'd be about enough for about 12 people in there. We had little canvas cots and air mattresses, sleeping bags, and then we might have had a day or so of rest, but then we went right into training again. There was no let up. Training and keep us busy and doing things, doing a lot of guard duty. And
was there any interaction with the South Koreans? I mean, did you see them around you, or?
Saw them around, not much interaction, no. We patrolled the area, wouldn't let them in. Of course, they would have loved to got in, and of course you had the prostitutes that was trying to sneak in and in that, but no, not much interaction. I can remember back there, it was wintertime and cold, and I remember standing guard duty, and there was a Korean family that lived just over the fence from our perimeter where our camp was. And they lived in, there was a man and woman and I think 2 little kids. And they lived in a teepee. It was like a straw teepee is what it was. That's all they had. And there's a little stream going across there. I can remember her, that mother with her baby on her back and squatting down over that stream, washing her dishes and stuff. And I remember at night hearing them cough all night long, somebody in that little teepee, just a cough and cough and cough. I don't know if it was the little kids or mother or dad or what, but man, I felt sorry for them. It was something, but not much contact with them at all, except the Korean soldiers that we had in our squads.
Yeah, let's talk about them. You mentioned them earlier when we were talking. What was your impression of the ROK soldiers?
The ones that I had in my squad were very good. Sometime now, I don't know if it was that time in reserve, but I think maybe it was that. Yeah, we were back in reserve, and I was a private, been online, been there for 30 days or so, and all of a sudden the company commander come in, and he says, "Ballard, you're squad leader." Just like that. And here I was PFC, and that's a sergeant. Squad leader is a sergeant position. And so all of a sudden, and we got a bunch of new men in, and all of a sudden I was in charge of 8 or 10 men, and of course I was probably one of the few that had been online in our not battalion, our squad, and that had been online, so I guess they thought that I was a veteran, but I wasn't. And I was scared to death, and we had a couple of, one night I remember at 3 in the morning or something, he said, 100% alert, everybody out of their beds, everybody online, we're going up. And so we jumped out and grabbed all our stuff and went over the ammunition, got our ammunition, they loaded us into trucks, and we could see the explosions and stuff up on the front lines. But they started up, and then I guess things calmed down, or maybe it was even just a trial to see how fast we could mobilize. I think that might have been it. But then they turned around and we come back, and but that was scary for me because I was in charge of these guys and I didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. Then around that time, I think I got transferred, or I asked to be transferred to the heavy weapons platoon, which was the 4th platoon, and that was the 60-millimeter mortars and the 57-millimeter recoilless rifles. So then I was squad leader of the 57s. And that's what I did the rest of the time I was in Korea.
What was the experience? What was that experience like? I mean, were you...
Well, it was a lot better than the being in the infantry squad, sure, because we didn't have to go out on patrol anymore. We didn't have to go out on the outpost, and we had a position. We had a bunker where the 57 could set in permanently, and we made that very comfortable. We had little cubby holes in there we could put food in, and coffee and this and that and the other thing, so it was a lot better. And that's where I had the ROC.
Okay.
That's where I had the ROC soldiers, was in my platoon, or my squad, when we had the 57s, and they were very good soldiers. And
you said they spoke English to a certain degree, but so there was communication. You could actually talk to them.
Yeah, we could talk to them, and I think they understood. Mm-hmm. They understood English very good if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. Like I said, sometimes if you told them to do something they didn't want to do, they say, "Me no understand." And then you'd like to kick them in the butt and say, "Yes, you do understand." But like I said, if you said "chow's ready," they understood that. But for the
any-
most part, they were very good. And you got to remember the terrible position they were in, because here they were, some of them were sergeants and maybe even higher up in their army. And then they come into ours and they're nothing. I mean, they're below a private, you might say. And I think some of the sergeants and some of the people treated them pretty nasty. But I treated mine good, and we were very good friends, and they did a very good job for me. I appreciated them.
Somebody out in the battle line would call in to you and say these coordinates or that, and then you would fire off your. I mean, how did that work?
Right. If there was a battle going on, why then our mission was to fire ahead of them, fire up, or if you could see a gun firing, if it was a machine gun, you could see the tracers, or you could see the muzzle blast. Well, then it was our job to knock that out, and we could do that. We had sights on there which were coordinated as far as distance concerned. You could see lines on there, and we fire a test. I'd tell a gunner to fire one, and we'd guess the range. We'd practice. You'd go out in the field and practice ranges, just guessing range. Now you'd have a rangefinder, you could get it right on, but we had no rangefinders, and you'd say maybe 3,000 yards and fire, and then he had a scope he could look through, and then maybe he was down 10 yards and to the left 5 yards, and then I would say up 10 and left 5 and fire again, and then we'd come close, and then I'd say maybe it'd be a foot or 3 feet, and I'd say over 3, down 1, and fire for effect, and then they would fire into it. And I always said that I could give me 3 rounds and we could knock out a mailbox in 3 rounds at 4,000 or 5,000 yards away.
But this is serious business, because if you're short, it's a possibility of going into our own men.
Right.
So this is it's not just randomly shooting a cannon off or something like that. You have to be very careful.
Right. But this was a lot. The 57 was very accurate. If you got the range right and everything. The mortars was more of a problem, because they weren't accurate. You could have some ammunition in there that got a little wet, and instead of firing where they wanted, it would drop. And so that was a lot more. We knew where we were firing, and we could hit it, and that was a lot better. But
so you said that the remainder of your time in Korea then was spent with this group?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened after? Did the war end?
July 27th, we were online on July 27th, and it was supposed to, ceasefire was supposed to go into effect at midnight that night, and we didn't believe it. Didn't believe that the Chinese would obey it, and a lot of firing going on. They were firing at us, and we were firing. We didn't fire back. The Chinese, or the Thailanders on our left flank, they were just firing up a storm. I think they wanted to get rid of their ammunition so they didn't have to carry it around or something, but they were just firing up a storm, and there was a lot of firing going on, a lot of noise, and at midnight everything stopped, and you just sat there and just quiet. And pretty soon you heard a cricket. Pretty soon you heard a frog. Pretty soon you started hearing these night sounds which you never heard before. And it was amazing, and you were scared. I think I was probably more scared that night than any other night, because you just figured they were going to come. And I mean, you'd look at that bush over there, and you'd swear that bush moved from the last time you looked at it, and everything was quiet, and it was just very eerie,
But
it was a relief. And next morning the sun come out, and the Chinese were out. They probably never had seen the sunshine for months. I don't know, for maybe a year if they were there that long, because during the day they just couldn't stick their head out or we'd blow them to pieces. And so they were out sunning themselves and drying their clothes and washing their clothes and waving back and forth. The night before we were firing at them, and some guys went over and gave them some cigarettes, and it was just, you know, it just shows you that, you know, you're not fighting the people, it's the government. It's the governments that are doing this. You know, you had no personal feelings against that Chinese man over there, or that North Korean, or what, but you're doing your job, and they were doing theirs, and that's it.
what was the process of going home? How did that get accomplished?
You had, they had a rotation system. It was so many points, I think. I don't remember how it worked, but I think you got so many points for how many months you were there. You got points for if you're online, that. And normally, if you were at least online, our company, a year, you'd go home pretty much from the year you were there. And you could look every month, you could look and see where your name was on the list, and every month it would be getting closer and closer. And finally, it was sometime in April, I don't remember the date, but sometime in April, my name was called, and Ballard, you're rotating home. So that was just a wonderful time, yeah. And they had a little ceremony, and I think the battalion commander, maybe even the division commander, had the ones that were rotating come out. They had a little ceremony for us, and they gave us some medals that we had earned, and then loaded us into trucks and trains, and we went back to Busan. So I took off from Busan.
On a troop ship?
On a troop ship home, yeah.
Did you get sick this time?
Got sick again. And I thought, you know, I thought I wouldn't get sick this time because I'd been on before. And I never thought I'd get sick going over because I'd been on Ferris wheels and roller coasters and twirly things and amusement parks. I never got sick. But, yep, I got sick. In fact, I say seasickness is in your head, because I started getting sick before we left the dock. I'd hear the creaking and groaning of the ship, and I'd say, man, I'm getting sick. And I'd say, you dumb fool. I says, go out and look. You're tied. You're at the dock. It's not moving. But I couldn't talk myself out of it. But then, after 3 days, I was fine again. And
did your family, especially your fiance, know you were coming home?
No, they did not know when I was coming home, no. After that, when I left, I think they probably told them, you know, it was closed, but they didn't know. Mm-hmm. And then after I left, I had no chance to write or anything. And phones, you didn't telephone cross countries at that time. I mean, it was unthinkable. Nowadays, they call from Iraq and all over, but no. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have nothing. There's nothing. Yeah. So no, they didn't.
Where did did you board a train then to get back to Grand Rapids?
We landed in San Francisco again. Yep, and had a band there welcoming us there, and it was and that was wonderful coming underneath that Golden Gate Bridge again. That was just glorious sight to see that, and. Band was there welcoming us, had big signs, and of course nobody was there. A lot of people were there to meet their soldiers, but nobody was there to meet me. And we marched to a troop train and went to Fort Sheridan in Chicago, Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and that was a lot better ride there because I was sergeant then, And so I had some rights that some of the other guys didn't have, so I had I and two other sergeants had a room, I guess, I don't know what you call it on a train, but
like a compartment.
compartment,
yeah.
okay,
yeah.
by ourselves with bunks, so we were
it's
a lot more comfortable.
It's interesting. I've interviewed a number of vets that came through San Francisco, and we always think of that feeling of seeing the Statue of Liberty in New York. But in many ways, that bridge in San Francisco does the same thing. It's America.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I get chills down my spine when you tell me that, because I can just imagine
that. Was wonderful.
Gosh.
And then we stopped the train stopped in Needles, Arizona. Is it Needles, Arizona, or Needles, California?
I don't know, but okay.
It's right on the border
there.
Yeah,
okay.
And that was when they let us off at the train depot, and that's the first that we had really been able to get off or be in America for over a year. And they had a little, I remember it, they had a little grassy area and then a row of stores and drug stores and that. And man, we went over there and bought candy and ice cream and chocolates and everything, and that was wonderful. And we just laid out there in that grassy knoll. I don't know, the train probably stopped a half hour or so, pop and that. And in fact, now that we travel in our motorhome, that was one of the places that I wanted to visit, was Needles, California. I think it's California. Yeah. And I went back there, and the train station is still there. It's not in use. It was fence around it and everything, but the same grassy area over there and the stores over there, it was almost like I remembered it. But that was kind of neat to go back there and see that. And,
so you arrived back in Grand Rapids by train?
I don't remember. I was discharged. I stayed at, I had a choice in Fort Sheridan. I could have went home for 30 days and then come back and get discharged. But I stayed there for, I think it took us about 2 weeks to muster out. And I got discharged. And I do not know how I got home. I think I took the airplane. I think I might have.
Now, did your folks meet you?
No. They did not know I was coming. No.
So let's get to this part now. You're coming home.
Yeah.
And they don't know you're coming.
No.
You're still in uniform.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I must have not flown. I must have taken a bus. I took a bus from Chicago. And the Greyhound bus let me off on Division. Oh, it was 131 at that time, which went by 1 mile from our dirt road up to our farm. And so they let me off at the end of our road there, and I walked a mile up that dirt road to the house. And I guess I just walked in and said, "Hi, Mom." That was it.
They must have been happy to see you.
Oh, yes, yeah. And then,
now, what about your girlfriend, who was soon to be
she
your
was
wife?
in college. She was in college that time in Grand Rapids. And right away, I got to, after greeting my folks and everything, I got in, they still had my old car there yet. I got in my old car and went up to her dorm, and I think she knew I was coming. I think I'd called her or something, and she was ready. Walked up and knocked on the door, and there she stood, and then all her girlfriends were sitting on the steps in the dorm because they wanted to see what this guy looked like that she was engaged to all the time that she was in college, and it was wonderful. Yeah, that was.
Still in uniform?
I think I might have changed out to civilian clothes at that time. I'm not sure, but...
We're going to wind this up, but I wanted to ask you a final question. How do you think your military experience shaped you as a person, the person that you are today? How did that military experience make you into the person that you are today?
Well, one thing, as I look back on it now, it made me proud that I'd served in Korea and that I helped liberate the South Korea. When you look at the difference between North Korea and South Korea now, it just makes me proud. And I think it increased my faith. I was a Christian. I believed that God had a plan for my life. He saw me through the war there, and I think it made me determined to live my life for the Lord. And I tried to do that in the Army, and to show my men that I was had faith. And then it also the Korean Bill helped me to go to college and to get my degree in college, and to better my life, to get a better job, and so all that helped. It was an experience that I wouldn't wish on anybody, and I wouldn't want to do it again, but I don't think I regret that I went through the experience.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking this time to sit down and talk with us, because it's such an important part of our American history, and people don't realize unless they look at the present situation in Korea. And like you say, it's so distinct why we were there. You know, I think there's not a South Korean that wouldn't say that, you know, look across the border there. You know, that's not what we want to be. We want to be like here, you know. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right.